Chapter 1. Countdown to Crisis. The of Houston's Mission Control Center was a living thing, steady, rhythmic, the pulse of a machine that never slept. Outside, the Texas sun hung heavy in the April sky, but inside, the air was cool, sterile, humming with the quiet intensity of men who knew the weight of their work. The Apollo 13 mission was just hours from launch, and in the dim glow of console screens, the ground crew moved like shadows in a cathedral of science. This was the moment before the storm, the last breath of calm before the world would hold its breath with them. At 1:30 p.m. on April 11, 1970, the countdown clock ticked relentlessly toward zero. The Saturn V rocket stood tall on Launch Pad 13, a towering monument to human ambition, its white skin gleaming under the Florida sun. Inside the command module, astronauts Jim Lovell, Jack Swigert, and Fred Hayes sat strapped in, their voices crackling over the radio with the practiced ease of men who had done this before. But this was no ordinary mission. Apollo 13 was meant to be the third lunar landing, a triumphant step in humanity's march across the cosmos. No one could have known that within days, it would become something else entirely, a desperate fight for survival. The ground crew, the unsung architects of the mission, worked in near silence. Their fingers danced over keyboards, their eyes scanned telemetry streams, their ears tuned to the faintest whisper of static. Gene Kranz, the flight director, stood at his console, his posture rigid, his mind already racing through contingency plans he hoped he'd never need. Beside him, Glenn Lunny, the man who had guided Apollo 10 safely home, watched the clock with the quiet focus of a man who had seen too much to be surprised by anything. And in the shadows, the engineers, men like Jerry Bostick, the guidance officer, and Sid Liebergott, the electrical, environmental, and communications systems engineer, prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. The countdown proceeded flawlessly. The engines roared to life at T-8, a half minutes shaking the ground beneath the pad. The Saturn V lifted off at 2:13 p.m., a column of fire and smoke erupting from the launch pad as the rocket ascended into the sky. The ground crew erupted in applause, their voices lost in the thunder of the engines. For a brief, glorious moment, everything was perfect. But perfection was an illusion. 2 days into the mission, as Apollo 13 coasted toward the moon, the crew performed a routine procedure restoring the liquid oxygen tanks to ensure proper fuel flow. At 9:07 p.m. on April 13, the world changed. A sudden, violent explosion rocked the spacecraft. The cabin lights flickered, then died. Alarms blared. The crew's voices, once calm, now crackled with urgency over the radio. "Houston, we've had a problem here." The words hung in the air like a death knell. In mission control, the room erupted into chaos. Screens flashed red. Consoles buzzed with frantic chatter. Crane's voice cut through the noise, sharp as a blade. "Okay, let's everybody keep cool. Let's solve the problem, but let's not make it any worse by guessing." The problem was clear. Apollo 13 was dying. The explosion had crippled the command module, leaving the crew stranded in the lunar module, a lifeboat designed for 2 men, not 3. Oxygen was leaking. Power was failing. The heat was rising. And the moon, once a destination, was now a deadly obstacle in their path. The ground crew sprang into action. Engineers scrambled for solutions, their pencils flying across blueprints, their calculators humming with equations that could mean the difference between life and death. The world watched, breathless, as the men in Houston fought to bring the astronauts home. This was the moment that defined them, not the triumph of landing on the moon, but the desperation of survival, not the glory of exploration, but the grit of endurance. The countdown to crisis had begun, and with it, the greatest rescue mission in history. The next chapter would be written in the void of space, where every second counted, and every decision could mean the difference between life and death.